Welcome to Empowered Ease, the podcast where we challenge the patriarchy by inspiring women to take ownership of their health, mind, body, and soul. My name is Jen Olinger. I'm your host. I'm a holistic coach, a critical care nurse, and founder of the Moonflower Collective. Each episode, you'll hear from incredible women, healers, health practitioners, coaches, nurses, and pioneers making a difference. Together, we'll delve into their personal stories, the inspiration behind their work, and how women heal and thrive in community. Discover how by uniting our strengths and sharing our journeys, we transform not only ourselves, but the future of health and wellness. So tune in, be inspired, and empower yourself alongside our vibrant community of women. This is Empowered Ease. Let's embark on this journey of communal healing together.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Empowered Ease, the podcast where we explore the intersection of health, wellness, and women's empowerment. I'm your host, Jen Olinger, and I'm thrilled to introduce another remarkable guest. My guest today is Eva ZobianWolfe. Her work is transforming the lives of countless individuals in the healthcare community. Eva is the founder and CEO of Eva Z Wellness. She's a true pioneer in the field of mind-body wellness. As a mind-body specialist, a nurse, and an adaptive yoga therapist, Eva has dedicated over 2 decades to helping chronically exhausted nurses reclaim their vitality and well-being. Through her personalized mindfulness plans and transformative sessions, she tackles chronic illness, pain, and mobility challenges head-on. Eva's expertise spans a diverse range of modalities, including adaptive yoga therapy, Reiki, and her approach has proven effective in reducing stress, boosting energy levels, and enhancing sleep quality. Not only is Eva deeply committed to improving the health of those in her care, but she also actively volunteers with social advocacy groups, showing that her dedication to well-being extends far beyond her professional practice. So join me in welcoming our guest today, Eva, to Empowered Ease. Well, welcome, Eva. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here. I'm so excited to talk about all the awesome work you're doing and find out a little bit more about you. So, I guess first, just like I gave you a good intro, but tell us like where you're located and your intro.
Well, my name is Eva ZobianWolfe. I am the founder of Eva Z Wellness. And one of the reasons that I started this particular work is because I have been in the medical field for over 25 years. It sounds really weird when I say that. I'm like, how is that possible? I can't possibly be old enough to
I'm
have
not
been.
that old.
I know, right? Like, just the math isn't mathing right now. But I've been in the medical field for over 25 years. Part of that was the entire time has been in pretty decent sized hospitals and in roles where I was involved in trauma responses, code responses, working in the ER, working in a neonatal intensive care unit. And I finished out the last 10 years as a nurse in a hospital here in San Antonio, Texas, as in the ICU. And the hospitals here are pretty large. We get a lot of patients from different areas around Texas, from San Antonio down towards the border and out into West Texas. And one of the things I started to notice after a few years of working in the ICU was I wasn't me. And anybody that has experienced an extreme amount of stress and burnout can maybe recognize some of these aspects in themselves. I felt like a shell of myself, but it wasn't an empty shell. It was like an angry shell where I didn't have a lot of,
shell of
yeah, yeah. I mean, I was very quick to be angry, but not so quick to be calm, and definitely not so quick to be happy.
Mhm.
And I started looking for things that I could do for myself to bring more of that happy version of myself back into my life, and to be, a better wife, a better mom, a better friend, a better coworker. And with that, I started pursuing yoga teacher training. It was something that I had been wanting to do for years, but I've had scoliosis since I was 12. I was in a back brace for 12 years, or not 12 years, for like 6 years. And I thought, well, who's going to take yoga from somebody that some days can't even touch their toes, right? There's days where I wake up and I'm in so much pain that I have a hard time standing upright. And I thought, how do I teach a yoga class when this is a norm for me? And after taking yoga consistently for a few months, I started to see a different side of yoga from what I had seen before. And I thought, this is the type of yoga that I want to do. And I want to find a mentor who will be with me for the rest of my life. And that part's really important because the mentor that I found is one of my best friends, and we talk regularly. We work together now. And so she had an adaptive, trauma informed curriculum that really focused in on the therapeutic benefits of yoga. Everything was rooted in, how is this going to be beneficial? How is this going to be therapeutic? How is this going to help you, not just physically, but mentally and spiritually, to be able to improve all the areas of your body and your mind and your spirit. And then one of the other things that I started doing was volunteering with different nonprofit organizations. And for about 9 years, I was medical support for a cycling organization that worked with veterans and first responders with PTSD. Eventually, I went through yoga teacher training and went all the way through yoga therapy training, which is more intense. You create treatment plans. You create with the client, you're creating this holistic plan of what are the areas that you feel you need more in your life. Do you need more energy? Do you need more sleep? Do you need more joy? And then together we work on a plan where we're incorporating all of those aspects into your life. And when I started working with clients privately, I started seeing people improving their sleep, coming off of blood pressure medications, either being able to completely come off of pain medications or needing their pain medications so much less frequently, being able to space out their pain injections further and further apart. And all of these things were, I'm not the one dictating how that's happening. That's a relationship they're having with their physician. But these were things that I've really noticed were missing when I was sitting in the ICU and at the last in the last moments of a person's life, and I'm watching all of the things that we're doing, all the medications, all the drips, all the procedures, the CPR, the dialysis, the 24-hour dialysis machines, the ventilator, the complete care that they need when they have to be turned every 2 hours, and just the amount of suffering that's involved in that process. And what really got to me wasn't necessarily that that person was having to go through it. It was watching the people in the room with them and thinking, this isn't a product of a disease. This is a product of a not knowing how to listen to their body, not knowing how to feed their body, not knowing how to nourish their energy, not knowing that a lot of the things that are just thrown out into our world aren't always beneficial for us. And a lot of us don't question that. And my thought was, what would happen if somebody had a conversation, of course, outside of the ICU, because in the ICU, you're stressed and that's not a time for those conversations. But what happened if somebody had this conversation and offered different choices that were more specific to you? What do you need? What's going to make you happy? What's going to make you healthy? And how would that change the trajectory of the timeline, the storyline for not only one person, but for an entire family? And that's something that I've seen with a lot of my students, where instead of reprimanding children, they're saying, okay, you can have whatever temper tantrum you want to have, but before you can do that, you have to take, if you're 2 years old, you have to take 2 big deep breaths with 2 long exhales. If you're 4 years old, you have to take 4 breaths. And then hearing that the 4-year-old is coaching the 2-year-old on how to do those breathing habits, because it has become a habit for them now. So now instead of, having a hissy fit, they take a deep breath and then, Mommy, I'd like a snack.
Yeah, regulating your nervous system.
Yes.
Like the dysregulated. I relate so much. You said so much stuff there that I can relate to. I'm a critical care nurse myself. That's my history. I just actually, this week is the first time I started a new job in 10 years outside of critical care. And I'm like, leadership in a critical care setting, but it's my first time not being bedside. And so I relate, and I've just finished a contract where I was driving 2 hours to it. So in 18-hour days, so much of what you said, I'm like, oh my God, yes. And right before this episode, for the listeners, we were talking about like driving in deer, like infested woods, and like just your nervous system being on edge. So after now you're talking about critical care, I'm like, oh yeah, there's that.
And that's just it. We have these patterns of being hyper vigilant.
Yeah.
And for critical care nurses, for all nurses, right? There's this amount of vigilance that our nervous system is in. Critical care nurses, I feel like it's another level. ER nurses are, they've got so many patients, they're going in so many directions. I think they still have it, and they have it a different way. And that's the same really for all different types of nursing. Critical care nurses, that's what I can speak to, because that's what I was. And so when we're talking about,
there's never the gas pedal is never let off of in critical care, is the thing I'll say. It's never like the other departments. Like there's not saying it like comparing, because there's worse things about med surg. There's a reason I work in critical care, because I prefer it. So it's not all bad. But when it comes to the toll it takes on your nervous system, there's more sounds. You literally, like I have a trauma therapist for myself, and we a lot of times struggle to get to my rooted stuff, because she says I have layers of micro trauma, just keeping some of the real trauma from being able to be processed sometimes, because I have 10 years of spending the worst day of people's lives with them over and over again. And it's an honor. I love that I did it. I can't even get away from it, even when I know I should, because it's not good for me, because I love it. But it takes a toll. We pay a price for that, a huge price.
absolutely, absolutely. So I was teaching it was funny, I was teaching a class on neuroscience to
That's my
yoga
specialty,
teacher
by the way.
trainers. Say that again.
I said that's my specialty, by the way, is neuro. So I love everything: neurology, psychology, neuroscience. That's all I do.
Love it, love it, love it, love it. Yeah, and there's so much to it. And the interesting thing is, what I've learned in yoga is so much more than I ever learned in school. I had a degree in physiology before I went to nursing school, and I still learned so much more about this in the application of it than I did in nursing, which to me just is absolutely astounding. So I'm teaching this workshop of neuroscience to yoga teacher trainees, and we're downtown and in a second floor building, or second floor of a building, and there's a garbage truck backing up outside of the building, and then we've got the beep and the beep and the beep. And as I'm talking to the students, all of a sudden I just stop and my face glazes over, and I'm zoned in on that noise. And then when it finally stopped beeping, I turn and look at my students, and they're all just looking at me like dumbfounded. They have
You there?
no idea what was happening. And the irony here is that later that afternoon, I was teaching a yoga class to a bunch of ICU nurses, and I was explaining what had happened. And in my mind, when I heard that beeping, all I could think of is, where is that? What is it? How do I need to respond? Who needs to be called? And what do I need to bring?
Yeah, I'm always trying to place it, because it's like when I place it, then I know what to do with it.
Exactly,
And if there's a
exactly.
sound I don't know when I'm at work, oh my God, you will. I've never felt more out of control because I'm like, what is it? Where is it? What is it? Like, oh,
Exactly. And then
yeah.
what was funny is when I brought it up to the nurses and I said, hey, this is what happened. Well, they immediately, before I even said anything, they went, well, of course, you need to know what is it, where is it, who do you need to call, and what do you need to bring? Those exact phrases.
I just got done with like a 3-week break, and it's like the sounds like I hear them when I'm falling asleep and when I'm like in the shower, and I don't even notice until I take a break and they go away, like when I go on vacation, and I'm like, oh my God, like it's constant. They're in my head constantly. The like all kinds of stuff. It's nuts, and like I'm wondering about the toll that takes too.
And the thing is, that's a lot. And if we go back to the HPA axis and look at that, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, and we look at that, it's actually a negative feedback loop. And so when we're in that hypervigilant stage all the time, it causes an overactivation of the amygdala. It causes destruction to the hippocampus, and it's continually dropping cortisol and adrenaline into the body, which we know we need all of those hormones, we need all of those chemicals in our body, but we don't need them in the amount that we are actually producing, which is why I don't know, do you work days or do you work nights?
I worked days mostly. I've done both, but
And this is happening on both days and nights. Night shift has the added bonus of working on the opposite of their circadian rhythm, and so they're already dumping more cortisol and adrenaline into their body, which is causing this cascade of inflammation and destruction in the body. And then on top of that, we have the hypervigilance. We have the continual stimulation of our sympathetic nervous system. And this shows up in when we're cranky, when we're tired, when we're overreactive. You talked about how you still hear the noises. The same thing. I would come home from work in the morning, go in, take my shower, lay down in bed, blackout curtains are closed, and I have it completely dark in the room. And then as soon as my head lays down in the pillow, it's like there's a vent going off in the shower. And so I would always have to play some type of noise, something that was familiar enough that I didn't have to pay attention to it, but it was enough to drown out the noises of the unit that were still bouncing around in my head. And towards the end of me working at the bedside, it had gotten so bad, I couldn't listen to music that had words in it because it was just too much stimulation. And
That's
so
funny because I listen to a lot of sound therapy that has no words, just tones. A lot. But I've never made that connection before. But now I'm like, oh, maybe. I mean, I don't know. I'll have to pay more attention. I love that. So when you say adaptive yoga, I love that. I know more about like adaptive sports than I do about adaptive yoga. So tell me a little bit more about adaptive yoga and what that is.
So I kind of chuckle at this because, and I talk with my mentor about this. We always make the distinction that it's it's adaptive and trauma informed. And every once in a while we'll have these conversations and I'll say, isn't yoga inherently adaptive and trauma informed? which it is. If you go back thousands of years to the original Vedic practitioners, this was all about a lifestyle, and it was a specific to the practitioner lifestyle. What are the foods that you're eating? What are the clothes that you're wearing? How are you moving? What are you taking in? What's the environment that you're taking in? And there's a perception, and there's been a culture, especially here in the United States with yoga, that it's performative, that there's a specific posture that you need to achieve in order to develop that balance and in order to develop that inner peace. And quite honestly, it's a bunch of bullshit.
I love that you say that though, because I can't, like, I practiced yoga since I was really young, because I got introduced to it in college sports. Our college trainer took us to a yoga class and I got addicted. So I did it like on and off for my whole life. But when I've told people about it that don't know about it, everyone's always like, I'm not flexible, I can't touch my toes. It's like, that doesn't even matter. And like, that's not the point. But that's what everybody says. And I love that you say that, because I'm like, that's everybody's answer. And I'm like, and that's more proof to do it, by the way.
Absolutely. I mean, I am living proof of that, because with my scoliosis, I've got an S curve in my spine. And that was one of the things that led me in that direction, is because when I practiced it consistently, but I had to start practicing it in a way that worked for my body. And that's where the adaptive component comes in. So I've really got two missions in my life. One is to help nurses and talk about practicing radical self-care, and alleviating and preventing burnout. And the other is bringing yoga out into the world in a way that absolutely everybody can practice yoga. Because the thing is if you're breathing, you're practicing yoga. It doesn't matter what the movement is.
What's the favorite pose? Corpse pose, where you just lay there? And that's the point of yoga, is to get to corpse pose.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the thing is, even in corpse pose, it has its own inherent meaning and beauty to it, because the idea is that we are a different version of ourselves every single moment. You know, who we are now compared to when we first started talking is different than who we are a week ago, who we are a month ago. And the idea with Shavasana, corpse pose, is that you enter into the pose as one version of you, but that version dies and you rebirth as a different version of you when you come out of that pose. And the idea, hopefully, is that you come out of it knowing more about yourself, seeing more about yourself, having a better and deeper relationship with yourself, and you move out of that making choices that are more aligned with who you actually are. And so the purpose of yoga isn't to be able to wind yourself up into a pretzel shape or balance in crow pose. It's actually to be as close as possible to your deeper, authentic self, who you really are deep down inside, that maybe you only let a couple people see, or maybe even you yourself are completely unaware of, because we've got these layers that are thrown on us by the traumas that we experience, all the experiences that we've had in our life, but the things that people say and expect of us that we accept, right? So one of the things
programmed when we're like real little and don't even know it.
Exactly, right? I had a hairdresser once that I went in, and she's like, "Oh, you don't have bangs. You need bangs. You have a big forehead. You need to cover that big forehead. You need to have bangs." And I thought, I didn't even know that I'm supposed to have bangs. I'm supposed to have bangs? Like, now I'm like, who are you to tell me what to do with me?
Right.
And so it's those little things, and when people say like, oh, girls aren't supposed to do this, or you're not supposed to do this, and as you grow up, these different roles or restrictions that people put on you, you go into yoga and you go through the mat and you go through the movements, and the whole time you're learning about yourself. You're developing an awareness of what it feels like to be in the experience of your body and the movement in your body. And also, what does that feel like in your mind? What does that feel like in your nervous system? And starting to unravel that and find the places where, man, this really makes me happy. I should do more of this.
Mhm.
I feel really heavy and not happy when I do these things. I should do less of this. And so it's a whole process of getting to know yourself deeper and deeper.
Mhm.
And I
Agree.
think, we do that inherently as we age. Hopefully, a lot, some of us are doing that as we age, where we're starting to go, you know what? I know more. I know better. I know what makes me happy. I'm going to do more of that. And the way that we do that also has to be kind to other people as well. Like, I can't be happy at the expense of somebody else's happiness.
Mhm. Yeah. So how I guess how are you working with people now? I know you used to be a bedside nurse, and so are you teaching yoga like 100%? Is that what you do? And
Well, I'm combining the two. So a lot of what I do is, excuse me, um, a lot of what I do is working with nurses in continuing education classes or in coaching that utilizes all the aspects of yoga. And then I'm also teaching.
okay, we had to pause. My husband is weed whacking, and he got very close to my office, and then, so I had to go out there and be like, "Hey, don't come near my office." And then he starts like revving the weed whacker. I'm like, "He's such a jerk." But he did walk away, so thank you. It is a
No.
huge job, and he has very little time to do it, and he works nights. So I'm like, thank you, thank you.
Oh my gosh. Well, so, and I always find this funny because whenever, stuff like this happens, um, I always say, I'm completely flexible because if you can't have your yoga therapist be flexible, who can be flexible about it?
Right, right. And that's like, that's I'm kind of gonna get off topic here, but it's gonna come back around. Is That's kind of like the purpose of my podcast. If I'm being honest, like one of the main purposes is kind of to challenge the idea that we have to do things in this very strict way. Because I feel like all of my guests, you included, have found this way to do life, to do healing, to connect that is your own. And then you help, most of my guests are facilitating that in other people. And it's not about doing it your way. Like I coach women through burnout too. And I don't coach people to do it my way. I coach them to figure out their way. And I love that. And that's kind of like this, where it's not this flexible, like this hard, rigid container that we're in, that a lot of things have become. If we give things a little movement, we treat people like humans with human needs. I mean, of course, there's boundaries are important. That's part of this. But, this is life. Like, so anyway, I'm off topic, but that's kind of what you're doing too. You're encouraging people to do life their way with what works for them. You know what I mean?
Absolutely,
So,
because
thanks,
that's such
Bobby.
it's such an important component because that's some of the places where, especially in healthcare, where we have so many issues that nursing in itself is a flexible profession, right? So if we look at the procedures that we have been doing, medicine is constantly evolving. We do a practice until we have evidence that shows us that we should be doing it differently. However, what usually happens when a new policy, a new way of doing something is introduced, everybody gets up in arms and thinks, why are we doing something different? We've been doing it this way for how long? And it's been working fine. Why do we have to change the policy now?
I think it's because it's one more thing, and we're already juggling I mean, if you really consider it, if anyone ever sat down and actually wrote down all the expectations that a nurse has to uphold during her shift, it's not possible. But
Oh,
you know what I mean?
absolutely.
It's just dropping one more thing on that bucket that's already overflowing. And it doesn't matter if it's helpful. It just feels like a smack in the face when they ask stuff sometimes because you're so overworked. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And that's the thing. That right there is a symptom of an overactivated, overstimulated nervous system. Because the whole reason that we went into the profession was to be able to help people. And we wanted to help people in the way that they needed help. We wanted to be able to offer kindness and comfort and care, and not necessarily what we think it is that they know. However, one of the things that's going on in the medical system right now is we've got a lot of overstimulated nervous systems. And uh, just to highlight that, you've heard the phrase "nurses eat their young"
Oh,
before,
yeah. Yeah.
right? It's
I
a
think that's
culture.
actually shifting. At least it is in a lot of the places I've been, and I see a lot of people pushing for it, but that was alive and well when I started.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, I had three different preceptors when I started in the ICU. Two were phenomenal, and one was a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. One moment super helpful, the next minute just bashing me left and right. And speaking to me in a way that I'm just sitting there looking at the person going, really? This is what you think is going to be helpful?
Yeah, I had this interaction early in my nursing career with I really respected her. She was a nurse practitioner at the time, and I mean, she'd been like a trauma nurse and a life flight. I mean, she was like one of those people who went after a lot of years of doing a lot of amazing things. And I don't remember what we got into it about, but I was like, you don't have to approach people that way. And she was like, you need to thicken your skin if you're going to be in this environment. And I remember like I respected her so much, but I was so upset she said that because I'm like, no, you don't. And if you keep treating people like that, there's not going to be anybody left. You know what I mean? And what I love about this new generation is they just do not accept that bullshit. They do not accept being talked to that way. And I'm like, woo, hallelujah. Like,
Right?
move on. They don't do that.
Absolutely.
So I love it.
Yes, I was having a conversation with somebody. She was a realtor, and she was talking about how her daughter was thinking about following her boyfriend to Germany. He was going to do his master's program there, and the mom, of course, was like, "Well, what are you going to do about your job?" And she said, "Well, I'm going to tell them they get the opportunity to let me work remote, or then I'm going to quit." And she straight up looked at her mom and said, "I'm only as loyal as my paycheck."
Well, I mean, that's how the company sees you. Why not? You're a number. So
And
why not? It's kind of funny how business has shifted because I mean, you could see that trend in so many places, but I feel like nursing so much. Like I've never kept a position more than 2 years. I don't want to. I get bored. There's always problems. I'll deal with a new set of problems. I'm tired of these problems. You know what I mean? For the most part, I shift a lot. But older generations, I mean, like I have people, my husband's been at the same job 20 years. He's an old soul, but there's a lot of people like that. They get a place they don't want to move. They want to stay. They want to invest. It's
and
different ways of doing it.
I worked with nurses that had been in the same unit for 30 years.
Yeah, I don't see those anymore, but I used to. Like, I think like the last two have retired from where I am now. But yeah, I feel like it's rare to see that. And I've been traveling for 5 years, and there are a lot of places that don't have any of that anymore since COVID, post COVID, pre COVID, yes, but post COVID.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And that's one of the things is that when you start to step into your worth and you start to create healthy boundaries, and I think that's where these younger generations are really doing an amazing job because they're establishing boundaries immediately and saying, this is how I expect to be treated. You can treat me this way because all I'm asking for is human decency and professionalism. And if I'm not receiving that, then there are plenty of places for me that I can go work.
Yeah, yeah. I love
And the
it.
thing is again, they're not being rude, they're not being mean about it. They're simply stating a boundary and saying, okay, here's the line. Lines get crossed, I'm out. See ya.
Yeah.
And I love that because, I mean, Brene Brown talks constantly about this. The people that live most wholeheartedly have the most boundaries.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Some,
I saw this thing that I was on a TikTok, and then I brought it to my therapist because I thought, oh, what do you think about this? But this girl, she was a nurse, she's like, when you're at work and someone's giving you pushback, or someone's acting from their emotions, reactive towards you, like, just use a gentle parenting. Like, she's like, gentle parent people. Like, I am not going to talk to you when you're in this place. Like, if you want to come back and have this talk later, when you're like, take a few minutes, or, like, very respectfully, but not engaging with that behavior in any way. And I was like, God, that's such a great way to do it, I thought. So I like went to her. I'm like, what do you think? She's like, I think it's wonderful. So I was like, okay, this is my new way to deal with this.
absolutely, absolutely. And something that I heard and I implemented it in the very first conversation right after I heard it was before immediately going to, your best friend or one of your friends and just, dumping on them about what's going on, venting, ask them, do
Yeah.
you have the mental bandwidth for me for me to talk about something?
I have
And
a really old friendship, but that's something we've implemented in the last probably like 5 or 7 years. We've been friends over 20, and it really makes a huge difference. I feel like because sometimes you don't know people are carrying stuff. We get worn out, and then you back away when you don't have energy to, you know what I mean? You ghost people for a while when you don't have energy to carry their stuff. But if you're just honest, you don't. We stay closer. You know what I mean? We operate. I feel like it's very much added to our friendship.
absolutely, I don't know what happened to my hair here just for a second. Sorry.
No, you're good. Just your hair. Well, I mean, how long have we been going here? Oh, we still got time. Good. I was going to say, it's so fun talking to you. I don't want to miss talking about your offer and what you too. So let's talk about that too. Okay.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So creating these boundaries is all part of yoga. One of the things that I talk about with my students and my clients is there's actually 8 different portions of yoga. There's 8 limbs of yoga. The postures are only one of the limbs.
Mm-hmm.
The very first 2 are what are called the yamas and the niyamas, and they are practices that you introduce into your life, how you interact with other people, do no harm, non-stealing, non-possessiveness. And then there's the yamas, or the niyamas, which are the practices that you have with yourself: self-study, self-discipline, surrender, purity. These are things that you're paying attention to. What are the things that I'm bringing into my life? Am I surrounding myself with people that are gossipy and nitpicking and pull me down, or am I surrounding myself with people that lift me up and empower me? Going back to the nurses eat their young, and I have a friend of mine that has a movement, nurses feed their young, and it's all about providing that supportive, empowering environment to nurses. And so those are the things that I'm focusing in on is how can I support, how can I empower, how can I remind people that you are an absolute freaking amazing person, that there is literally nobody else in the world like you. So why would you try to be like anybody else? Instead, be the best version of yourself that you can possibly be. What makes you happy? What makes you light up? And if you're doing things that don't light you up, those are signs and symptoms that maybe, it's not saying, quit your job and go do something else. Maybe that is the solution, but instead, how can you add more things into your life that do make you happy, that do light you up, that when you start to talk about those things, just like you and I started talking and immediately it was just, okay, we're both going and we're both enjoying it. And we're like, yes, absolutely. Because this is something that lights us both up. When you talk about how these things are beneficial, how burnt out, it took me a good couple years of stepping away from the bedside to be able to see just how burnt out I actually was. I knew it. and I started to see it more and more. The real big indication to me was we've got 3 children, and the last one was still living at home when I was still working at the bedside, and I had gone from full-time to part-time to per diem. And I'm getting ready for work, and I'm packing my lunch and getting everything all set up. And he looks at me and he goes, "You're always so smiling and happy now that you've cut back your hours. He's like, you're just happy all the time." And I thought, well, crap, what have I been before now?
Right. Tired, really tired.
Tired, exhausting, exhausted, exhausting, snappy,
Yeah. Yeah.
controlling.
Snappy. That was one of like, I experienced habitual, like intense, severe burnout, like where I had medical problems and had to take months off work and all of that and came back and have found balance now. But prior to the habitual burnout, that's one of the first things that started happening that I don't think I was quite as aware of then. But I think that was one of the first signs that I wish I could go back and make changes then, is when I started feeling like real snippy, real short, like I can't handle one more thing. That like, where I'm going to lose my temper, that kind of like real edginess. And I feel like I operated that way for a long, long time. You know what I mean? And I justified it because I was like, I'm protecting people, like this is my job. You know what I mean? Like, but in reality, like after I healed, and what I tell some of the new nurses is like, I practice a level of detachment now that I wasn't capable of before. And that helps me so much. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because the thing is, and this is probably going to, a lot of nurses are going to see themselves or hear themselves in this. The idea that we sit in our car before we go into work because we have to sit there and mentally prepare ourselves to the barrage of whatever it is that we're going to experience when we go in, right? We know that there's going to be stuff happening. And the question is, are we gonna be able to see it fast enough, to do something fast enough, to be able to be where we need to be? And having to sit in our car and have that space of, okay, I can do this. I'm not gonna lose my shit over this. It's gonna be okay, right? Or crying before we go into work. And then there's the coming out of work and sitting in your car and then just mentally unloading, crying, screaming, venting, whatever it is that we need to do. The problem is it's still not enough.
Yeah.
And I don't think people realize that. And I don't think we as nurses are talking about this enough.
Yeah, I'm like they need to have better preparation. I know that's like a huge change, but I feel like it needs to start in nursing school. Like you're also for in med school, like we're not the only ones that carry this. They just deal with a different and face a different set of stressors. So like, and a lot of people in healthcare, honestly, like RTs, like, I mean, you say nursing because it's the biggest, most common, huge group of people, but really anyone who's working in healthcare I don't know about the outpatient settings, but the inpatient settings, it's a very stressful, hard environment on all levels.
Well, I will tell you, I worked, so before I was a nurse, I was a phlebotomist and I was also a pseudo med tech. And then I was trained, but actually wasn't, didn't have that particular background in medicine. And I worked in urgent care that was part of our hospital system, and it was in the evenings. And so we would have, people come in with the nail through the hand, fell and broke their arm, the sniffles, the things that people go to urgent care for. But then we would also have the ODs and the cardiac arrests. And we would have these situations where, shit hits the fan. And there was a skeleton crew there of one doctor, one nurse, one x-ray tech, one MA, and a phlebotomist. And when you've got that tiny of a staff, everybody's doing everything together. And so it's not as intense. It's nothing like the ICU, nothing like working in, one of the main hospitals. It has a different and it's more sporadic. It's like feast or famine. It's either
But you get
everything's nothing.
desensitized when you see it all the time. So there's not necessarily saying that it's harder. Like and I talk about, I remember like talking about, this is the best example for me to see this is when you talk about like child trauma, like kid trauma is like, because things that you don't think are traumatizing traumatize children. Because like the worst thing they've ever experienced is the worst thing they've ever experienced, regardless of whether it seems traumatic to us. And that is like such a present thing. You know what I mean? With trauma, you can't compare it, but because it's all different. There's a reason I'm an ICU nurse. It's because I learned to deal with trauma before I was a nurse. I learned to compartmentalize a long time ago from other things, and that's what made me good at it. And so that's
Yes, and that is such a big component of an understanding that we don't necessarily have, is that one of the reasons that we went into medicine, that we went into nursing in the first place, is because we were already the nurturers. We were already the people pleasers. We were already the caregivers of somebody at some point in our life.
We're very likely putting other people's needs before our own until it gets so bad that we learn to do it. You know what I mean? Because until we suffer enough that we learn to put ours first, we're most likely, most of us are putting other people's needs before our own.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's the thing, is when we go into a career, such a high stress career with an already overstimulated nervous system, it's no wonder that we've had this culture of nurses eat their young, because we're already overstimulated. We're already in that disconnection from our emotions, disconnection from our compassion. We think we're compassionate, and we are. However, we have compartmentalized so much that we're not as compassionate as we have the potential to be. We're not as kind as we have the potential to be. And we're not as loving as we have the potential to be. And that doesn't just go to our relationships with our patients, family members, doctors, coworkers. It extends to our own family, our own inner circle.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah.
And that's the area where, when we learn to extend kindness and compassion and grace to ourself, and to have that inner language change to where we start to recognize the direct imbalance that we have in our body, in our brain, in our nervous system, we start to shift and make small little choices that bring that disconnect. So if our sympathetic nervous system is up here and our parasympathetic nervous system is down here, we do things like go on vacation, go get a pedicure, go to get a massage, spend some time with our friends. And we think, oh, wow, like I did so much self-care and I feel so much better. But then we go to a yoga class and the person says, okay, we're going to sit in stillness here for 15 minutes. And we think, ah, that's torture. Why would I do that? And like, boom, we're back up here again. And the reason for that is because there's still this disconnect between our nervous system. We're still not in balance. And so anything that is truly restorative, relaxing, rejuvenating, that would bring us closer to balance, feels uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's like I remember meditating when I first started meditating. And also experiencing friends of mine as they start meditating, talking to me about it. Like, it's so hard to turn your brain off. You just want to quit. And it's like the practice is sitting there and letting that, not judging yourself for thinking during it, letting that be okay. It's acceptance on every level. And it's so hard to practice at first until you get into it a little bit. Even now, some days I'm like, ah.
Absolutely. And the thing is again, just like with yoga, because meditation is part of yoga, it's one of the small parts. Again, there's different styles, there's different forms. And so when meditation is really difficult for us, that's a sign that we actually need it even more so. And that's when we can use different styles of meditation where we can incorporate repeating a word, we can do chanting, we can do mantras, we can do affirmations. And I love that there's so many variations because it doesn't have to be the words that I say. It can be whatever word you want to. If you want to chant ladybug over and over because the picture of a ladybug makes you feel calm, chant ladybug, right? So it's whatever it is that makes you feel calm. Or my favorite is the Kirtan Kriya. It's sa ta na ma. And you say it out loud for 2 minutes, softly for 2 minutes, silently in your head for 4 minutes, and then softly for 2 minutes, and then out loud again for 2 minutes. So it's a 12-minute meditation. And this specific meditation there's a white paper done on it by the Alzheimer's Research Foundation that shows that it improves cognitive function in dementia patients.
Interesting. I didn't know that. I have to write that down.
And so when you do a meditation like that, especially when your mind is just like all twirly and you can't ground and you can't silence and the thing is remember, the whole point of meditation is not to empty your mind. It's not to silence your mind. It's to not follow the thought. So you see the thought and you start, well, I need to get this when I go to the store and I need to make sure, and I got to make sure that I get by and pick up that outfit, right? You notice, oh crap, I just deviated. And then you come back and you're like, okay, breathe in, breathe out. But if you're doing something like sata, you're using hand mudras or hand movements and incorporating some type of repetitive sound, then you're focused in on the hand movements and the repetitive sound, and your thoughts don't stray as much.
Harder for them to leak in. Yeah.
Exactly. And so it's those little moments where you go, okay, I can't do this one today because it's just not. And this is again going back to adaptive yoga is okay, what's the state of my nervous system right now? What's the state of my breathing? What's the state of my mind? What's going to be most beneficial for me today? Is it doing a yin yoga practice? Is it doing a restorative yoga practice? Do I need to go to hot yoga and burn off some extra energy? Or
that's my
do I need to
honestly, that's my if I, like the worst ever, if I can't manage hot yoga is the thing that makes me feel better.
And that's the thing is, there's so many different styles of yoga. One of the things that I really like is a lot of fascia flows because it helps to unstick the sticky areas of my my hips and my low back. And so it's a real slow flow, and it's really good. But then I also need some energetic movements periodically. And so there's different styles of yoga and there's different styles of meditation, just like there's different styles of breath work. You can do breath of fire where you're
find out what works for you, and then that changes. For me, it changes what works all the time. I'm going back and forth. I use have you ever heard? Are you on Insight Timer?
Yes.
I was gonna say I keep meaning to mention it on this show, but it's a free app and it has that. I mean, I want to say over thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of free content in different styles of meditation, sound therapy, real therapists on there doing actual courses. And then you can pay and upgrade, but there is probably tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of free content on there. There's no need to pay. And it's a great, great resource.
I want to say it's like something ridiculous, like $19 a year if you do pay.
I pay for it because I like it, but and I'm like, you guys are, but it's a great, great resource. We're getting kind of long on time here, so I want to really make time to even talk about what you do for people and how you help people and how people can get a hold of you, because you've said such wonderful things. I could talk to you. I mean, honestly, we could do like a 4-hour show, probably talk about this forever. I love talking about this stuff. So, but tell me about how you're helping people specifically now, and how people can get a hold of you, and what kind of people you're helping. Like who are your clients right now? Who could benefit from your services?
I'm working with nurses that are stressed out, overwhelmed, and want to have more happiness, joy in all areas of their life.
The majority of nurses.
And so I offer I offer courses. I offer CE courses on
Perfect.
mindfulness, meditation, yoga, movement, things like how to say no without guilt. There are nurses that are entrepreneurs. I also offer courses on how to be a confident speaker. So there's a lot of different ways that we can incorporate yoga into all the different areas. I work one-on-one with clients. I have group therapy sessions, and then I also have courses, and soon there will be yoga retreats happening with CE courses as well too. And
When you
so
work with clients one-on-one, do you incorporate yoga into that practice at all, or is it just coaching kind of?
I do incorporate it's yes, it's yoga therapy. So it's different
Oh,
every single time. So it
I
could
love
be we
that.
do a meditation, it could be we
That's
do a
all part of it.
movement. It's all of the things. And
Oh,
so
sorry
yeah,
to interrupt you. I just
absolutely.
wanted to know.
So yeah, and then I incorporate Reiki and also Vedic counseling as well too, which Vedic counseling is very similar. It's similar to astrology, using that information so that you can see what are your challenges, what are your tendencies, where are the
Oh,
areas
so
in
it's
your
not
life.
like Ayurveda. Vedic is different.
Yes, it's
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
yeah. So Ayurveda, yeah, is the sister science of yoga because it's more about the medicine and food and all of the holistic aspects of it. Vedic astrology is looking at that specific moment in time where you were born and seeing how that influences your life. How does it show up in your language, in your impact on the world, and incorporating it in terms of how does it affect your health as well too?
Love that. So if people are looking for you and they're like, yes, want to do this, do you do that all in person or is it virtually as well?
I do it virtually. The majority of it is virtual.
Okay. Okay.
And so they can find me on social, Eva Z Wellness, EVAZEE Wellness, on different social media. And then my website is evazwellness.com.
Oh, okay. And then I ask all guests this question, but like, what is your go-to when things are like overwhelmed? Your go-to like a self-care or uh your mindfulness practice that's like your go-to?
For me, it's
Mhm.
being outside, going outside, either sitting outside and listening to the sounds around me, or going for a walk and being really intentional about how I'm breathing, how I'm walking, and tuning into me, turning into my body.
I love that. That's perfect. Well, Eva, thank you so much. I had such a blast talking to you. Hopefully, you'll come back and talk to us again when you've got new promotions. Love to hear about them.
Absolutely, absolutely. I would love to do that. Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast. And you're right, we could sit here and we could talk for hours.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. So, thanks so much. Bye.
The show and finding guests. For those of you that are looking for a little more and some support in reclaiming your energy and your joy, I invite you to explore my program called From Burnout to Blossoming, Reclaim Your Energy and Joy. It's a transformative journey that I walk you step by step through to help you rejuvenate and embrace your full potential and re-engage in the joy of life. So you can always visit my website, www.themoonflowercoachingcollective.com, and to learn more and sign up. And don't forget to join our vibrant community by subscribing to my newsletter. You'll gain access to a free supportive community and network of women tackling burnout. We regularly post and have conversations inside our private group. It's totally free. You'll also receive updates on the 2 free monthly workshops I do each month. I'm starting a chakra series currently, and we would love for you to join. Also, it'll help you stay in the loop with all the empowering initiatives that I'm doing at the Moonflower Collective and all the guests on the show, Empowered Ease. So, together we can nurture a space where women thrive, I hope you'll join us there. Until next time, continue to empower yourself and each other, and take care of yourselves, ladies.